Let me start with a simple question. How many times have you said yes at work when you actually meant no? If you have spent enough years in corporate life, you already know the answer. You say yes to extra work. You say yes to unrealistic timelines. You say yes to tasks that are not even part of your role. And slowly, something interesting begins to happen. Your workload keeps increasing. Your stress keeps increasing. But your recognition doesn't always increase. And one day, you realize something uncomfortable. You are not drowning in work because the organization asked you to. You are drowning because you never learned how to say no. Now here is the tricky part. In corporate life, saying no is not a simple word. It is political. It is diplomatic. It is contextual. And sometimes it is dangerous if used incorrectly. So the real skill is not saying no. The real skill is knowing how to say no without damaging relationships, reputation, or long-term growth. Today, I want to share a practical framework based on years of observing how work actually happens inside organizations. Not theory, not textbook advice, just reality. The first truth: no is a political word in the office. In theory, workplaces encourage honesty. In reality, organizations run on perception, trust, and reliability. When someone gives you work, they are not just asking for output. They are also silently evaluating three things. First, are you dependable? Second, are you collaborative? Third, are you someone who creates friction? Now imagine if your first instinct is always a blunt no. Even if you are technically correct, the perception can become dangerous. You may be labeled as not flexible, not supportive, not a team player. And once that perception forms, it spreads quietly. Corporate reputation rarely changes through one big event. It changes through small repeated signals. That is why experienced professionals rarely use the word no directly. They redirect, reframe, or negotiate. Because the goal is not to refuse work. The goal is to manage expectations without creating resistance. The second truth: never say no immediately. One of the biggest mistakes people make is reacting instantly. Someone assigns work, and your response is immediate. No, I can't do this. Even if you are right, that response can sound defensive. Experienced professionals do something different. They pause and evaluate first. Before responding, ask yourself three questions. First, is this actually unreasonable? Sometimes we reject tasks emotionally, not logically. Second, is this temporary or recurring? Helping occasionally builds goodwill. Doing it forever builds exploitation. Third, what is the political importance of this task? Some work may look small, but it might matter a lot to your manager or leadership. Understanding this context is critical, because sometimes saying yes strategically helps you build long-term credibility, and credibility gives you the power to say no later when it truly matters. The third truth: silent suffering is not a strategy. On the other side, there is another problem. Many professionals never say no. They just keep accepting more work. And slowly, three things happen. First, their performance quality drops because they are overloaded. Second, their personal life suffers because work never ends. Third, they become the default dumping ground for every extra task. And ironically, this does not always lead to promotions, because organizations reward impact and visibility, not silent sacrifice. So if you never push back, people assume you have capacity, and they will continue assigning work accordingly. This is why the ability to say no intelligently is not arrogance. It is professional survival. So how do you actually say no? Now let's move from philosophy to practice. The goal is not rejection. The goal is structured pushback. Let me share a few approaches that work well in real corporate environments. Method 1. The prioritization response. Instead of refusing the task, you highlight your existing workload. You might say something like this: "Happy to take this up. Currently, I'm working on A, B, and C, which are due this week. Which one should I deprioritize to accommodate this?" This approach does 3 things. First, it shows you are not resisting work. Second, it makes the trade-off visible. Third, it shifts the decision back to the person assigning work. Most of the time, once people see the full picture, they rethink the request. And you never had to say no directly. Method 2. The timeline negotiation. Sometimes the task is valid, but the timeline is unrealistic. Instead of rejecting the work, negotiate the timeline. For example, "I can definitely support this. Given the current deliverables I'm working on, I would realistically need 2 extra days to do this properly." Notice the tone. You are not refusing. You are protecting quality and feasibility. This is a much safer position professionally. Method 3. The ownership redirect. Sometimes work is assigned to the wrong person. Instead of refusing, you redirect constructively. For example, "This looks closely aligned with what the analytics team is currently working on. It might move faster if they take the lead, and I'm happy to support if needed." You are still cooperative, but the responsibility shifts to the correct place. Saying no to different people. Now let's talk about something important. Not all no situations are equal. The way you push back depends on who you are speaking to: peers, subordinates, or your boss. Each requires a different approach. Saying no to peers. With peers, the risk is relationship friction. So keep the tone collaborative. For example, "I would love to help, but this week is packed with deadlines. If this can wait until next week, I can give it proper attention." Or, "Let's see if we can split this work so both of us can manage our priorities." Peers usually respect honesty when it is explained properly. Saying no to subordinates. When dealing with team members, the goal is not refusal, but development. If a team member pushes work upward unnecessarily, guide them. For example, "I understand this challenge. Before escalating, what options have you already tried?" Or, "Why don't you take the first attempt at solving this? If you get stuck, we'll review it together." This builds capability rather than dependency. Saying no to your boss. This is where diplomacy matters the most. Direct refusal is rarely the right approach. Instead, frame the conversation around priorities and outcomes. For example, "I can absolutely work on this. I just want to confirm which of the current priorities should move down to accommodate it." Or, "To deliver this properly, I may need to shift the timeline of the existing report. Would that be okay?" This keeps your boss involved in the decision, and it protects you from being seen as resistant. The long-term impact of saying no. Over time, how you manage these situations defines your professional identity. If you say yes to everything, people see you as dependable but possibly overstretched. If you say no too often, people may see you as difficult. But if you learn to negotiate intelligently, something interesting happens. People begin to respect your judgment. They see you as someone who understands priorities. And in corporate environments, that perception is powerful. Because leaders are not just looking for workers. They are looking for people who can manage complexity and make balanced decisions. Final thoughts. Let me leave you with one important reflection. The word no should never be used casually in the workplace. Every request sits inside a larger context. Relationships, politics, trust, expectations. Sometimes saying yes builds goodwill that helps your career later. Sometimes saying no protects your time, your health, and your performance. The real skill is knowing when to accept, when to negotiate, and when to refuse. Because corporate life is not about surviving one task. It is about managing years of work, reputation, and relationships. And if you master this balance, something powerful happens. You stop feeling overwhelmed. You stop feeling exploited. And people start respecting your time. Not because you said no loudly, but because you said it wisely. If this video helped you think about work differently, consider subscribing to the channel. Because here at CGH, we don't just talk about working hard, we talk about working smart.